Gal.
Oh, I'm so tired. Time to wind down with an egg sander and a strong zero.
ポイントカードはお持ちですか？袋はいりますか？
Don't be like our boy Gaza. Be prepared next time you're in Japan and use a translation app. Get Wi-Fi coverage across Japan, eSIM, and mini router rental with Ninja Wi-Fi. Trusted by 21 million customers worldwide, Ninja Wi-Fi provides great service for an affordable price. Visit ninjawifi.com and use the code GAL for 20% off.
This is going to be maybe one of the most difficult episodes for me to record in a long while. But today on GALP, we're saying goodbye and celebrating one of my favorite game series of all time, Senran Kagura, but also discussing the potential future of the series. I'm kind of tearing up while recording this, so please guys, don't make fun of me. I don't like the idea of things ending. I'm the same way with like How I Met Your Mother and Friends and TV shows and game series that are ending. So yeah, let's just jump into the disclaimer. For you new folks, GALP is a weekly gaming discussion podcast under the GALP Podcast Network. We talk about all sorts of games from big AAA titles all the way to awesome indie games, but our forte is Japanese games, so expect that a lot. We can be found anywhere where you listen to your podcasts, including Spotify, Amazon Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and now on YouTube. Whilst you're there, be sure to give us a 5-star review. And remember, if you want to join in on the fun, then follow us on all of our socials. That's Blue Sky, TikTok, Insta, and X, formerly known as Twitter, all at GAL Podcasts. For those that don't know, Marvelous Japan had recently announced that they are stopping service for Senran Kagura New Link, otherwise known as Shinobi, a mobile game that was running for about 7.5 years. There's not much to say about this game. We never really got an official English port of this game by any means. It was pretty much a gacha game, but it kept running despite Marvelous's change in studio direction. And it sort of acted like a beam of hope for the fans out there who wanted a new mainline entry into the series. But potentially now, that light has been extinguished forever. The series started back in 2011 on the Nintendo 3DS with Senran Kagura Burst. It was a side-scrolling action game. Think NES Ninja Gaiden or Shinobi, but with ecchi Shinobi. Then we got Shinobi Versus on the PS Vita. I believe there was also a PC worldwide port on Steam, as well as a PlayStation 3 version in Japan. This was the first foray into 3D quote-unquote Musou-style gameplay. I say Musou-style gameplay because everyone kind of compared it to Dynasty Warriors at the time, which it's kind of unfair because Dynasty Warriors didn't have a lot of the elements that Senran had, and is potentially only implementing that kind of stuff now. Like, for example, verticality. That was something that was available in Senran from the get-go, pretty much, but hasn't really made its way to Shinsangoku Musou. But yeah, Shinobi Versus was my first experience with Senran Kagura, and it was actually Rich who suggested it to me. As you guys know, I'm a big fan of Dynasty Warriors, and he felt I would fall in love with this game. I'm not sure why he felt that. Is it because of the ninjas? Is it because of the hack and slash gameplay? Is it because of the transformation sequences? I don't know. I'll leave that to Rich. But you know what? Rich was right. I really did enjoy it. And I kind of felt a bit awkward playing the game at first because of all the sexual content. But playing more, I sort of forgot about it. For me, it was mainly about the gameplay and the story and not the plot. Get that? The plot. Characters in this series surprisingly have very deep backstories, which is almost further developed with each game. I played the game on the Vita, did some research on Marvelous and the other games they were publishing at the time, did a few episodes on the upcoming Estival Versus, and lo and behold, Marvelous Europe had reached out to me. It's overwhelming recalling this because we have a lot of history with Marvelous and we really love them. We still do love them. Marvelous was the first company to ever reach out to us and the first company to invite us to their offices. They welcomed me. We had fun, and they really helped me to improve how I interview. I was quite nervous at the time because it was the first interview with a games publisher, and we had a conversation before recording. And I mentioned it to them. I said, look, guys, this is the first conversation I'm having with a games publisher. I will edit stuff that you don't like or whatever, but I am going to be a bit nervous. And we had this sort of discussion, and they were very helpful, the Marvelous team at the time. None of whom I think still work for Marvelous, but no, they were really cool. And we had a sort of discussion about what they did before Marvelous. There was a married couple. I can't even remember their names. I'm actually really bad at this. Oh, wait, give me a moment. I need to try and figure out who I spoke to. But I spoke to this married couple, and they used to work at Nintendo, and they left Nintendo to work at Marvelous. They were pretty cool, and they were pretty excited to talk about Senran. They were like, yes, this is the features, and even the ecchi bits they were talking about in such a positive light. And it's interesting to see how gaming has changed over the years, right? We're talking about, this was around 2012, 2013, where it wasn't really a sin to be an ecchi game. Now, I don't really want to get into the whole political side of things because I know people are having all sorts of conversations nowadays about, you know, ecchi video games and whatnot, but they were not afraid to talk about it. And Marvelous in general were not afraid to talk about it because this was their top selling game. It didn't make sense for them to hide it. So they were really open. I brought them a gift, omiyage, you know, like a gift, because it's customary when doing business with Japanese companies. So I got them a copy of Famitsu. I can't even remember how I got that copy of Famitsu. I think I went to Japan Center. Shout out to Japan Center. But yeah, I went to Japan Center. At this time, they were still selling Famitsus. They don't sell them anymore. And in fact, it's very difficult to find copies of Famitsu magazine in the UK. Just very difficult. But yeah, at the time, I was collecting magazines, particularly Famitsu magazines, because we would kind of try and translate and get a lot of the new news before it kind of went out. And now it's obviously the internet and stuff, so, you know, it's very easy to get news. But back then it was slightly more difficult, I guess, especially with Japanese games. So yeah, there was this one copy of Famitsu that had the Senran girls on it on the front cover because they were promoting Estivalverse, or I think it was Estivalverse actually, yeah. Anyway, I can't remember if it was Estival or Peach Beach. I think it was Estival. And it had all of these interviews from the game's developers and things like that. So I gave them that as a gift. They had come with gifts as well, which is really interesting, actually. They gave me my first mouse pad, my Kagura Oppai mouse pad. I know it sounds really weird, but Senran is kind of well known for that etchiness. So they gifted me one of those. And that sort of became the meme on the podcast for many, many years, where other games developers would give me mouse pads, like especially Japanese game developers. Koei Tecmo had given me 2 DOA mouse pads, as well as more from Marvelous as well. And it kind of became like an ongoing joke. I still have them. The unfortunate thing is that the Kagura mouse pad actually got ruined. So after so many years, that mouse pad kind of became a little bit dirty, you know, because your wrist kind of has like dirt on it and oils and stuff. I was like, okay, I'll put it in the washing machine, and it shredded it. And I was like, no, I put it on a low cycle, cold water, no detergent, and it just shredded the mouse pad. And all I have left is like the skin of the mouse pad. So I still have that framed on my wall as a memento, but still, that really upset me that day. And I went back to Marvelous. They didn't have any more mouse pads. And I was just like, no, it really upset me. Anyway, besides the point, so they were really chill. And they gave me a few copies of Estivalverse, which we gave away on the podcast. And speaking of Estival, it was the first Senran game we got on home consoles in the West. It was fantastic. New stages, new characters, and, forgive my pun here, a buttload of DLC, including customizable items, as well as cameo DLC, including Ayane from DOA, and I believe characters from Ikitosen, I think, as well as a playable Ayame, who is the shopkeeper. And also the Panty Gacha returned, and to be fair, it was a fun yet pretty annoying idea. Annoying in the sense that the Panty Gacha kind of got you in, and it just became more and more and more and more expensive. So it had a system in which if you paid more zenny, you would get higher odds, and it would tell you what your odds were of getting new items. And then it would just kind of topple out to the point where you just needed to pay more and grind more to get items that you wanted. Yeah, that's just how it was. And to be honest with you, you didn't really need to do it. You could have enjoyed the game without the Panty Gacha. It doesn't really give you any bonuses. It's purely cosmetic. But yeah, fun thing though, I think what would be a great idea is that if they ever make a new Senran game, which is highly unlikely now, is if they made the Panty Gacha more useful. Potentially having the lingerie and the swimsuits in the game and the costumes give you different buffs, right? Especially during Shinobi transformation sequences, etc. Yeah, kind of like armor in like RPGs and stuff. could help you in battle. But I guess one can hope for a new Senran game. The next games in the series were really purely fan service. But in my opinion, Peach Beach Splash had the potential to bring the community together. And although we won't be seeing it in MLG tournaments, Marvelous was supporting it a lot on launch, hosting tournaments and competitions. And they had their Discord with all of their bits and bobs, especially Marvelous Europe. Back then, because Senran was such a niche game, people would host lobbies and stuff and like post them on Twitter. And, you know, this is even before Discord. Like people were sharing that stuff around and they were like, hey, this is my Peach Beach Splash lobby. If you guys want to join in and play a game, etc. And then people would set up private matches. It was really fun. And you kind of, you know, got a lot out of it. There would be people jumping in on game chat and they were like the kindest people you'd ever see, especially in a shooter game. You know, a lot of people, if you play Call of Duty, you can know how toxic those chats can be. For Peach Beach Splash, a lot of the people were very civil and pretty nice, actually. So GG to them. Yeah, I didn't mention what Peach Beach Splash was. PBS is basically a game in which you play in teams and the aim is to basically defeat the enemy team. And yeah, I forgot to mention, actually, you played as Senran characters in swimsuits with water guns. That was basically the main appeal of the game. There was some sort of story behind it, but it wasn't really the most fleshed out. I kind of consider this game purely fan service, and that's what it is. And is fan service a crime? I don't really think so. It was an interesting game. It's not for everyone. Like I said, only the hardcore people were playing it, etc., etc. The next thing that we saw after Peach Beach Splash was Peach Ball, which is a very interesting game. It was actually a Nintendo... Oh no, we got Reflections. I forgot about that. Reflections came out, which was a Nintendo Switch exclusive that used the Joy-Cons and HD Rumble and things like that. It was basically like a reflexology game featuring Senran characters. I never played it personally because I never had a Switch at the time. I don't think I'd be interested in playing it, to be fair with you. What I am interested in is Peach Ball. And you're like, Fish, what? You were just talking about Peach Beach Splash and how that it was a fan service game. What's the difference between that and Peach Ball? Peach Ball was unapologetically fan service. It's a pinball game with a massive Senran character in smack dab in the middle of the stage. And I can't even remember what the goal was, but yeah, you just get a high score. It was quite fun and it got me into pinball games. It kind of was very reminiscent of like, you know, that Windows XP pinball game, but just with waifus. That's basically what it was. And it was pretty cool. I believe it was also like our first game that was produced by Honey Parade. The art style had changed as well. Actually, no, I think PBS also was done by Honey Parade. Besides the point, the art style had changed slightly. You know, if you had played older games and you're like, well, it has this weird anime art style anyway. What do you mean it's changed? It has changed. Go and look at it. But yeah, that art style changed and it was pretty nice welcome. And it was a pretty fun game. So to me, it felt like a tech demo. And you're like, Fish, what? This is a fan service game. No, the reason why I say that is because they already had a lot of animations in the game. They had a lot of character models in the game. To me, it made me feel as though, is Marvelous trying to test whether or not they can actually port this game over to the Switch or do like a Senran remastered for the Switch, like bring Shinobi Versus, bring Estival Versus, and actually port it over to the Switch. I remember around this time, there was a lot of talks in the gaming community about games like this, and there was starting to become a change and a shift in Marvelous, particularly in Europe and obviously in Japan as well. So I was thinking, wait a minute, the games industry is changing. People don't really want to publish games like this anymore, at least at the time. So where are we going to go from here? A lot of people are like, well, Sony has stopped basically publishing these games. A lot of censorship, quote unquote censorship, has been going on with this type of game. Some games have not even been released on Sony consoles. And a lot of Japanese developers at this time were thinking, well, if I can't release this on the PlayStation, let me try and release it on Switch. And a lot of companies did that. And that's where I thought Marvelous was going to go. Instead, Marvelous went the opposite direction, which was quite unfortunate for a lot of people. I don't really know, and I don't really want to get into this because there's so many conflicting stories, but you know, the fact that they nuked the Marvelous Europe server on Discord says a lot. I don't know the drama behind it. I could research, but we're not really here to talk about drama, but it kind of showed the community that Marvelous is changing. And I remember the last time I was at Marvelous, they were showing me, I can't remember what it was for. It was they were showing me a few games. So I was there for Peach Ball. I think Peach Ball had already released or it was going to release. And then they had showed me some tech demos for Sakuna of Rice and Ruin, which was like their big game, as well as Grand Blue Fantasy Versus. Sorry, I lost my train of thought, but I also forgot to mention that Bon Appetit was a game, which I can't even remember because I never played that game. But you know what? I kind of want to play it and review it almost. It probably is very expensive to get now because it's a PS Vita exclusive. I believe it's probably on the PC, so I can pick it up there, but I don't know. I really don't know. I was going to say that the games industry had changed, and it's something also that Takaki-san had mentioned. Takaki-san is basically the producer and the creator of the Senran Kagura series. He actually left Marvelous around 2019, I think, which was very, very interesting. So Sony had sort of implemented some new platform changes and content policies in the fall of 2018. So, you know, there was a lot of changes that needed to be made. And I'm not sure if Takaki had a falling out because of the Sony thing, or if Marvelous had say, hey, you need to step up your game here and remove all this content. But there is sort of a thing with removing that content from Senran because it's a core part of the game. I know it's not necessary as such, but the fans want it. And it's got part of core gameplay mechanics built into it. Like, for example, if you played Senran Kagura First Renewal, you'll notice that there is no transformation scene, which is weird. I played it for the first time. I was like, where's the transformation scenes? Where did they go? It felt very odd. And in fact, they had removed the intimacy mode in Burst Renewal. So on the PlayStation 4, if you do play it on PC, that stuff is still intact. So there you go. It was very interesting, to be fair with you, that these changes were made, and the intimacy mode isn't necessarily needed, which is fine. So that kind of makes sense, to be fair with you. So yeah, I didn't really get into Burst Renewal. Burst Renewal was very interesting because it did use those new game assets. It was kind of the game that we were waiting for between Peach Beach Splash and 7, or Senran Kagura 7, or 7 even, or whatever you want to call it. Let's call it Senran Kagura 7. So Senran Kagura 7 is not coming out. And we know this because Takaki-san has left. He's no longer working on the franchise, which is really upsetting. He has worked with Marvelous before because Marvelous was publishing Grand Blue Fantasy games at the time. So he was still in contact with the Marvelous team, right? But he just wasn't working on games like Senran. And I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure where we are with this game, you know? Where we are with Senran. Are we going to see... He'd also worked on Katagawa Jet Guards, which uses the same sort of engine as Senran. And that game looks visually stunning. You can also play as Senran characters in that game as well. But the censorship in this game and in the series has always been like a point of contention. Some people are like, well, it's Sony's fault, it's Marvelous's fault. And part of me thinks both are to blame here because, yeah, it's Sony's fault, really. Because now you can have a lot of games on the PS5 and the PS4 that are acceptable. Look at Stellar Blade. Look at stuff like Lollipop Chainsaw Repop. There is still a lot of sexualized games on these consoles to this day. And it's always kind of a thing where Sony will put in a policy in place and then revert it. And I think it's such a shame. I think as well that change had given Marvelous an opportunity to say, hey, let's change our image a bit. Let's not be the guys that are known for Senran. Let's diversify. Because if you look at Marvelous now, they have diversified. They do a lot of indie games in terms of publishing and things like that. But at the same time, they also work on a lot of their own games, you know, like Rune Factory games, as well as Story of Season games. Sorry, forgot about that. And we're getting a new game for Switch for both of those series. And I believe there's going to be a new Sakuna game as well, which is quite interesting. So they have sort of changed their attitude towards this style of game, even with other games as well, where, you know, they've changed their attitude on some games as well. Like, for example, Story of Seasons. I remember during COVID, we recorded with Marvelous remotely via Zoom, and we spoke about Story of Seasons. And it was mentioned on the episode that they were very worried about certain aspects of the game. Like, for example, especially with PEGI ratings, they were worried about betting. There was horse racing elements in the game, and they were worried that that might push the game to a 16 rating because of betting in the game, which can happen. And they said if it had reached the 16, we would have added in Senran characters as cameos and things like that. And I thought, wow, that's quite funny. But now you wouldn't see that. Speaking of Senran characters, we have seen them also make their way into other games, like the hack and slash game Senran Kagura / Neptunia Ninja, or Neptunia Cross Senran Kagura Ninja Wars, I think is the name of the game. It's basically a crossover with Senran characters and the Nep characters. And to be fair with you, it sucked. It didn't have any of the Senran Kagura game mechanics. It was obviously done by Compile Heart, so it was very badly made. And it was kind of using the Senran brand to bring people in to play this bad game, in essence. And they're very disappointing. I think very disappointing for Senran fans. And the weird thing is that we did an episode in, not retaliation, but we did an episode basically saying we don't like this game and we want 7. And I think that is our most popular episode of GALP. So big thanks to the Senran fans out there that are listening. I'm losing my voice here because I was coughing throughout the whole episode and I've got myself a glass of water. I feel like I'm doing like a filibuster, like in American Congress. I don't know much about American politics, but you know how like American Congress, someone does like this filibuster where they talk nonsense for like hours and hours and just, I feel like I'm doing that at the moment, but I'm not standing up. I'm sitting down because I can't be bothered to stand up and record. But yeah, what was I talking about? Yes. Okay. 7 even. There is really no hope for that series. I don't quite understand why Marvelous didn't just say, hey, okay, let's forget about Sony. Let's put this on a Nintendo Switch, because Peach Ball kind of made me think that's where they were going. Turns out they just canceled the game outright. It's in development hell. And the fact that the main producer doesn't work at Marvelous anymore, the guy who is Senran Kagura, doesn't work at Marvelous anymore, is just upsetting. And the fact that we got this game announced in 2017, actually, if you finish the Peach Beach Splash, you got a trailer for the game. So 2017, 8 years ago. Yeah, 8 years ago since Senran. And I think 2020 was the last appearance of a Senran character in a game that was hack and slash. So very disappointing. But here's where we talk about the future of Senran. What could Senran Kagura be? Who could be the savior of Senran? So we have a few options here, right? Marvelous could be like, hey, let's bring it back. Let's bring Tagaki-san back as well. And actually bring back Senran Kagura 7. Release it on the PS5, on Switch 2, on the Xbox, on PC. They could do that. It's very unlikely, but they could do that. And here's another thing that I think could work well. If another games publisher just buys the IP outright. Because, like I said, with Shinomas, with Senran Kagura New Link, with that game shutting down, I think it's really the last nail in the coffin for the Senran Kagura franchise. So that IP is going to be up for sale. Even if it's not up for sale, I think Marvelous should put it up for sale. Or some companies, like the ones I'm going to mention, should reach out to Marvelous and make an exchange of some sort. Here's who I'd like to see take on the Senran Kagura series. Koei Tecmo. Yeah, makes sense. I think Koei Tecmo with Senran would be a great addition. Koei Tecmo are well known for the hack and slash games and have basically become the masters of the genre. We know this. There was heavy inspiration for Senran from games like Dynasty Warriors and Warriors Orochi and things like that. So yeah, it just makes sense. And Koei doesn't shy away from censorship or things like this, considering Koei has made the first Galgame. Koei's made the first Otome games. They've made the first Musou games. They still make Galgame and Otome games. And they still make games that have ecchi things in them. Look at the new DOA dating game that's just released. So Koei are not really worried about things like that. And they've worked with Marvelous before. There's been a lot of crossovers, especially, like I said, in DOA. We've seen DOA characters in Senran, and we've seen Senran characters make their way into the DOA universe through costumes, especially destructible costumes as well, in DOA 5. So there is a possibility there. And I think if Koei Tecmo had taken on that IP, then we can see some great graphical performances, improvements and things like that. We can probably also see better graphics. Someone suggested to me, and actually that someone was Jacob, he was basically saying, imagine Senran Kagura done in the DOA engine, which is kind of insane. Like a more realistic style of Senran Kagura game. Or we can get D3 Publisher to make this game. And you're like, Bish, what? Yes, D3 Publisher. The reason why I say D3 Publisher is because technically D3 Publisher is Bandai. It's the moniker that Bandai uses, or is the company that Bandai uses to release these sort of etchier games. For example, they did Onechambara Origin, which was a fantastic hack and slash and kept that sort of anime art style. They also released Samurai Maiden, which was another thing that I was surprised about, that game made its way to the PS5 with all the censorship and whatnot. And it wasn't censored. So I think times have changed now where you can still release those games that you were able to back in the day. Marvelous. Sell the IP or do it yourself. Like, come on, let's be real. But yeah, D3 Publisher I think would be a great one because they've done those games. But also they've worked with the previous developers of Senran, Tamsoft, right? So now it's done Honey Parade games, but before it was done by Tamsoft. So they know the characters. They know the mechanics of the game. They know how to make Senran games because they've made them. Some people have also mentioned, oh, what about Sega and things like that. I think this type of game would be a bit too niche for bigger developers like Sega and Square Enix to even deal with or even talk about. Just being honest here, it's right up the alley of Koei Tecmo and D3 Publisher / Bandai. So let's make it happen. Let's make it happen. I would love that. And if they bring Takaki-san as well, that would be even better. Another thing that could potentially happen as well, maybe Sai Games. Now, this is where I can see it happening. Considering that Takaki-san works at Sai Games and is like a producer there, he could potentially have some sort of weight. If he does want to bring back the Senran series, just put some weight forward and say, hey, let's take a gamble. Let's buy the IP and work on it like that. Or Takaki-san could start his own game development studio and, give us more Senran. No, I don't know. That would be a great idea, but obviously that takes investment. The other thing I would also like to see, if none of that works, is maybe like some sort of crowdfunding thing where the community buys back Senran from Marvelous or Xseed or whoever you want to call it, gives it back to Takaki-san or whoever. That would be cool. I think if we started like a Kickstarter or something. I'm not saying I'm the one to do it because I really don't want to have that responsibility, but if someone out there starts a Kickstarter to buy back the IP, I don't know how much that would cost. Probably hundreds of thousands, but let's do it, guys. If you want Senran back, that's the way we got to do it. Sorry, I have to end this episode short. I'd love to talk about Senran for hours and hours and hours and hours, but I'm losing my voice. I was sad at the beginning. Now I'm a little bit hopeful. Let me know what you guys want to see. Do you want to see a new Senran game? Do you think Senran should die as a series? Which games publisher would you like to see take over Senran? Let me know in the comments below, or on X, or on Discord, or basically any of our socials. Anyway, I think next week we're going to be talking about the Nintendo Switch 2, which is exciting. Hopefully my voice comes back for that. But if it doesn't, then maybe there's no episode next week. But I think next week, oh no, I was going to say next week is Easter. No, it's not. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode and we'll see you guys next time.